On August 22nd, the Ukrainian armed forces blew up trains in Crimea. Boom, boom, boom! Military equipment convoys are burning.
Damn, that was a hell of a hit, guys.
And missiles are flying toward the Crimean bridge.
This is fucked, gentlemen.
A GRU base was blown up in Sevastopol.
That is absolutely unbelievable. I can hardly believe it. It's truly astonishing.
The bridge was blown up. The bridge was blown up. In Jankoy, fuel convoys were destroyed. Everything is burning. In Novorossiysk, Malik's advanced naval drone successfully eliminated elite Russian Navy divers. A significant blow. Just an oil depot. Holy shit. The Ukrainian armed forces struck the Druzhba oil pipeline and Russia's largest oil refineries.
This is fucked. The plant is on fire. It's burning hard.
There's panic in Russia, a fuel shortage, and a colossal surge in prices. Breaking news, friends, August 22nd. And sensational news, we're blowing up military equipment convoys in Moscow and the Moscow region, St. Petersburg, and now even in the occupied Crimea. In Sevastopol, a GRU base was blown up, and in Jankoy, fuel convoys were destroyed.
Fuck, that was a massive hit, guys.
In Novorossiysk, a naval drone successfully eliminated several elite divers of the Russian Navy, a significant blow to their specialized forces.
Holy shit. Unbelievable.
The Ukrainian armed forces struck the Druzhba oil pipeline and Russia's largest oil refineries. Panic.
My delicious compote is burning quite badly.
Fuel shortage. Rising prices. And at this moment, Donald Trump is putting pressure on Putin, threatening massive sanctions and promising Ukraine long-range Jazz-M and Tomahawk missiles that will fly to Moscow. Moreover, a Ukrainian cruise missile with a range of over 3,000 kilometers is already blowing up Russian oil refineries. Hello, Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery. The era of large-scale pressure on Putin has begun. Ukraine is striking Crimea. Trains are exploding, GRU bases and oil refineries are burning, oil pipelines are paralyzed. This is no longer just a drone and missile war that is destroying Putin's war machine from within. The new Ukrainian Flamingo missiles with a range of 3,000 kilometers are already in production and are striking Russian oil refineries. Meanwhile, Trump warns, it is impossible to defeat Russia if we do not attack it. He is ready to give Ukraine American Jazz-M and Tomahawk missiles to strike Moscow and St. Petersburg. And he promises tough sanctions against Russia if Putin does not come to the negotiating table. What does this mean for Putin and the future of the war? We'll discuss all of this right now with renowned military analyst Roman Svitan.
Greetings, I wish everyone good health.
Roman Grigorievich, the Crimean railway in Jankoy has been blown up. Last night, in the area of Jankoy station, Ukrainian Special Operations Forces carried out special actions against a train carrying fuel and lubricants. The fuel trains have been hit. There are powerful images circulating online of the explosion and secondary fires. In your opinion, does this strike at Crimea's fuel supply line and the logistics of Russia's southern grouping? How serious is this?
Well, Jankoy is a railway junction, a so-called rail hub. 4 lines converge there. The line from Kerch, the line from Sevastopol, the line from Melitopol coming from the Kherson side. Why is the Jankoy railway junction so important for us? Plus, there's also a road junction there as well. There is a tactical aviation airfield there, which the Russians use as a transit depot, plus radar stations and also anti-aircraft missile systems. Naturally, this hub is important to us as a target. And as soon as we have the opportunity, whether with drones, missiles, informants, partisans, or the direct involvement of our special groups, any logistics passing through Jankoy are destroyed. If Jankoy is blocked, then it will be impossible to support the Kherson and also the Zaporizhzhia directions from the south, from Crimea. And from Rostov, you can't really make it to Kherson by land corridor. It's 500 kilometers. So it's especially important to stop this particular railway hub. And now we've resumed focusing on this issue because over the past few weeks, there have been several strikes specifically on the Jankoy hub. And why are the strikes so intense right now? Because the Russian forces are actively and extensively transporting military equipment, including various types of weaponry, along with critical fuel supplies, which in a significant incident were spectacularly blown up this time after their intelligence and surveillance efforts successfully identified the specific fuel train cars carrying these volatile materials, and of course a vast quantity of essential ammunition, all primarily by means of their extensive railway network across the region. So when we hit it, it detonates quite nicely as well. And also because it's a transit warehouse, those storage facilities detonate as well. Why are the strikes happening constantly? For the past few weeks, we've been talking about strikes on the airfield. This very airfield is being used by the Russians as a transit warehouse. They unload, they load, so they unload from large railway platforms. There are enough ramps there, and then the cargo is loaded, for example, onto trucks and transported to the necessary locations. So we will definitely continue. There are no other options here. Until Crimea is liberated, junk oil will, of course, keep burning.
Roman Grigorievich, what is the actual scale of the damage to Russia's military logistics in the south today after the destruction of these fuel trains? How long does such a strike suffocate the group's supply lines? Are we talking days, weeks? And what will happen now with the so-called bottleneck for the Russians? Is it the tank cars, the locomotives, the track infrastructure, or the security of the routes?
Well, at the very least, it's been reduced by about 3 times. Why? Because now they'll have to transfer everything from the rail cars to trucks. And that's at least a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of the amount of cargo they can move. Moreover, again, in order to move, you need gasoline and diesel, and that's already a problem. And in Crimea, that's definitely a problem. So for us, it's kind of a double blow, you could say. On one hand, hitting the oil refineries and stopping fuel supplies, and on the other, striking the railway, because if the electric traction is shut down, then naturally the Russians might as well start gathering donkeys again. They've already killed off all the donkeys and mules along the line of contact, so now they'll have to carry things on their own backs.
Roman Grigorievich, Sevastopol, southern Khersonis, and the GRU base. At around 3:35 in the morning, 2 powerful explosions occurred near the Yuzhny airfield in Khersonis. The fire was detected even by NASA satellites. The occupation authorities tried to write it off as exercises, but reports indicate that the GRU base was hit, and there are a lot of messages from Russian military correspondents, first and foremost. In Sevastopol, this is the nerve center for intelligence command on the peninsula. In your opinion, if the GRU aviation logistics site was indeed struck, how does this affect the stability of the entire command system in Crimea? Please assess these results. And is it possible to expect a domino effect from intelligence failures to the weakening of air defense and counter-battery operations on the southern front?
Well, they've been targeting GRU operatives for a while now, wherever they can track them down. We have a pretty good network of informants within our special services. Moreover, several intelligence agencies are working on this. Crimea is Ukraine. Naturally, it's practically packed with our agents through and through. And their Russian speech, the Okanye and Akanye accents are detected in 3 seconds flat. So, of course, our intelligence knows about this immediately. Moreover, we have several intelligence agencies all working under a single center. The main intelligence directorate, the security service, which has its own intelligence, the foreign intelligence service, and even the border guards have their own intelligence service. Not to mention the national police and the Ministry of Internal Affairs, they also have their own hands and eyes there. Naturally, as soon as information is confirmed from at least 3 sources, plus our partners help us as well. It's not for nothing that American planes are constantly flying overhead, tracking every movement in Crimea from every angle. Moreover, in addition to reconnaissance planes, there are always the eyes of American drones in the sky, so more intelligence gathering as well. That's why we know what's happening in Crimea much better than they do in Russia. Even though they've occupied it and are trying to make moves there, the ground in Crimea will burn under them from the actions of our forces, the armed forces of Ukraine, when the real task is set. Why? Because what we're discussing right now is just a preparatory stage, an attempt to create certain zones of influence, zones of control. But in reality, of course, if the operation to liberate Crimea begins, it won't be easy for them. We won't get tired of repeating it. We've been saying for several years now that Russians need to seriously prepare to leave Crimea. Remember how we've been saying this for several years? Swimming, crawl, breaststroke, or even doggy paddle. You can go ahead and buy air mattresses, well, actually inflatable mattresses. At the very least, you'll be able to paddle across the Kerch Strait somehow.
Roman Grigorievich, and of course there's also Novorossiysk, the naval drone and elite divers. In the Bay of Novorossiysk, a Ukrainian naval drone lost connection and was recovered by a group of Russian Navy reconnaissance divers, where it detonated. The GUA reports that 5 elite Russian combat divers were eliminated. So Novorossiysk is the backup part of the Black Sea Fleet, and after the strikes on Crimea, it serves as a base for repairs and for reloading air defense systems. What could be the consequences of these strikes? What do you think?
Our drones are labeled, do not touch, will kill, do not touch, will kill. Well, they don't just write that for nothing. It's like that everywhere. But as soon as Russians see something like that, they just have to mess with it, like sticking two fingers into an electrical socket, or if a drone is lying there, just leave it alone and they'd still be alive. No, they just had to go and touch it, pick it up, take a look, and poke around inside. Well, they poked around inside. Now it poked around inside them and did so in a way that cost the divers their lives. No one is going to mess with it anymore. Maybe next time, but for now, no one will. The drone is just lying there. It's not bothering anyone. It's waiting for someone to pass by with those magnetic, well, so-called magnetic mines. That is, it's underwater and it reacts, for example, to the passage of ships. Well, if they hadn't touched it, it would have just lain there waiting for its ship. Then the special forces would have blown it up. And after that, they would have come over and handled their business. But now there are no special forces left. Now our guys will have to put a new drone there. Why was that necessary? They just went and created another problem for us. And, well, we'll have to do it. What else can we do?
Roman Grigorievich, what needs to be done about Novorossiysk? Because Novorossiysk has become the base of the Black Sea Fleet, what's left of it after the strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine and Malyuk's drones. But now, as we understand it, we have to strike Novorossiysk as well.
That's a big question. Why isn't that being done? Well, there's the range. We can see it clearly. We have Magura, we have Sea Baby, there are Maguras, there are Tolokas, there are drones that can reach Novorossiysk. Why there still hasn't been a massive strike is simply unclear at this point. Our GUR guys brought them there, placed these drones on the ground. Well, these are mines. I'll repeat once more. These are bottom mines, drones of the bottom mine type. But there still haven't been any real strikes on the Novorossiysk Bay. Why not? We can only speculate about that. Why were there no strikes on oil refineries until Magyar was appointed commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces? Well, most likely Magyar wasn't involved in that deal 6 months ago when the safety of the Russian oil refinery and the Russian Black Sea Fleet was ensured. Remember, that was a very important and crucial agreement. Our office completely and entirely stopped striking, or at the very least effectively forced our generals. They truly and absolutely tied their hands. And those are supposed to be generals, for heaven's sake. What are they, kids or something? Well, they're not little kids after all. They could have sent them in the direction of the Russian ship like Brody did. That's what it means to be a major. If a major general can't do it, but a major can. So we weren't lucky with the generals, but we were lucky with the majors. They carry out combat missions. So for some reason, nothing is flying towards Novorossiysk because security was ensured there 6 months ago. No one is targeting the Black Sea Fleet. Again, security has been ensured. That was when Polisa was jumping out of his skin. One of those office weirdos was bragging that they had come up with such a thing, such an idea. That's how the Russians were deprived of the chance to strike, by securing the safety of the Black Sea Fleet's oil refinery, to the point that even the Americans were stunned by such proposals. The Americans really were stunned, like, are you fighting a war or just sucking up to Lisa? In the end, these office types need to make up their minds and pick a side.
Roman Grigorievich, and of course your signature topic, oil refineries, the Druzhba pipeline, and the fuel crisis. The strike on the Novoshaktinsk oil refinery has been confirmed. The storage tanks have a total capacity of 210,000 cubic meters. There were hits on drone and logistics warehouses, strikes on fuel and lubricants depots in the Voronezh region, and attacks on the Unecha hub. The strikes on the Druzhba pipeline, which occurred at the beginning and almost in the middle of August, have already led to pumping stoppages. Hungary has announced a temporary suspension of supplies, expressing outrage right now these days. There are price spikes on the exchange and a domestic gasoline shortage. The Russian government is restricting exports. According to estimates from the Russian market, up to 10% of refining capacity has been taken out of operation. In your opinion, how deeply are the strikes by the Ukrainian armed forces cutting into Russia's ability to wage war right now, say over the next 4 to 8 weeks?
It's not for nothing that we've been talking about this for the 4th year now. And you can confirm it. We keep talking about Unecha all the time. Why? Because Unecha is only 50 kilometers from our border. It would have been destroyed long ago, and the Druzhba oil pipeline simply wouldn't exist anymore. The Russians were pumping 300,000 barrels of oil per day there. That's $18 million a day they were making from the Druzhba pipeline. But of course, we had to wait for the Hungarian to resolve this issue. We couldn't do it ourselves. That's what I'm saying. These are questions for our generals. They were chewing on the wrong thing. They should have been growing their brains after all. So The issue of stopping the Russian oil industry is directly correlated with our main goal of dismantling the Russian Empire. We talk about this all the time too. We have no other way, no other mechanism to defeat Russia except by breaking it apart. Bringing down this colossus with feet of clay is easier than easy. It will fall apart on its own. It just needs to be set on fire. The feet of clay of Russia and its economy are the so-called petrodollars, the oil and gas sector. Every year, they receive more than $1/3 trillion, over $300 billion, from oil and the oil and gas sector, which the Russian economy gets. Then Nabiullina redistributes this money among the republics, keeping them in line with this mechanism. Basically, they are practically paying the Russian republics, or rather the republics that are part of the Russian Federation, so that they remain within the Federation. That's all there is to it. As soon as we stop supplying these petrodollars, it's possible, it's clear to see. How long has it been? 3 weeks of work, and already 15% of the Russian oil sector is gone. In 3 weeks, 15%, if this continues for a few more months, it simply won't exist by the end of the year. It just won't exist. And then Nabiullina will have to fool the Russian public by simply printing rubles out of thin air, but she can only get away with that for a year. You can print money for a year, but after that, inflation will just bring down the Russian Empire. The republics of the Russian Federation will scatter just like they did back in the day because of the very same problem, the lack of petrodollars in the Soviet Union. This is what strikes on UNECHA, which we've been talking about for years now, and strikes on oil refineries will lead to. The main thing is not to stop. Why did they stop last year? They stopped. This year, at the beginning of the year, they stopped as well. They stopped again. Now, if they stop it this time, those who stop it should be locked up forever under Article 111, as it's called. That's treason. And it's about time to deal with our security services if they can't do their job. After all, we don't see any strikes against the security services. Look, where are the sanctions against Maluk and Budanov? There aren't any. They simply don't exist. Now, Hungarian sanctions that are being imposed on Hungary, by the way, including Hungary itself, because from the Druzhba oil pipeline, Hungary, Fico, and Slovakia, that is Fico and Orban, Hungary and Slovakia, were receiving certain kickbacks, or rather not Hungary and Slovakia, but Fico and Orban personally were receiving certain kickbacks. So these Hungarian sanctions, that's what will lead to the collapse of Russia. Believe me, once Russia starts to fall apart, war will be the last thing on their minds. They won't be thinking about war if that territory starts breaking up into separate republics. After all, it's 17.5 million square kilometers. Do you really think they'll care about those 100,000 poor souls they've captured there? Everyone will scatter in all directions. That's why I've said it more than once. They'll be swimming away. Freestyle, breaststroke, even dog paddle. Plan ahead, practice, and start figuring out how you're going to swim to Taman. Although getting to Taman is a big question in itself. The thing is, Rostov Oblast, Krasnodar Krai, even up to Kuban, that's all Ukraine after all. Our brave Cossacks, specifically the Ukrainian Cossacks from our historic Zaporizhian Sich, were indeed heading towards the regions of Kuban and the Don Cossack lands many hundreds of years ago, a significant period in their history. That's Zaporizhian Cossacks. At that time, the Kalmius River marked the so-called watershed between the Zaporizhian Cossacks and the Zaporizhian Cossacks on the Don Cossacks. But of course, it was the blood of the Zaporizhians specifically. My great-grandfather was a sotnik of the great Don army Borodenko Yegor. That's it. There's no need to say any more about which Cossacks are on the Don, or rather, whose they are.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Roman Grigorievich, regarding the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery, we have confirmed the strike on the Novoshakhtinsk refinery. And again, as I said, we are trying to destroy oil processing. 10% of the oil refining capacity on the Russian market has been put out of operation. In your opinion, what will break down faster if we continue this course of action? Frontline logistics, civilian transportation, or regional budget revenues? What do you think, and which facilities are at the top of the vulnerability list after UNECHA and, for example, Novoshakhtinsk?
I used to have a lot of friends in the oil industry. Well, it just so happened that fate brought me into contact with oil workers. So when I started saying oil extraction, they told me you absolutely can't say it like that because you won't get a bonus. You have to say oil production. And lately, I've been deliberately using this oil industry slang, saying oil production, not oil extraction, because otherwise there won't be a bonus and we'll be left without money. Let's get some oil. Let's speak like oil workers do, oil.
Yes.
That's right. The thing is, the continued strikes on the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery, one of the main plants in the Rostov region, ours, Ukrainian, because that's our land. Once again, I'll keep repeating it. Our Far Eastern Ukrainian People's Republic, the DPR, that's also Zeleny Klin, our Ukrainian land. So we'll sort it out. So the Novoshakhtinsk plant is the only one in the Rostov region that's operating, well, was operating, because now it's been completely destroyed. Our defense forces have really thinned it out, and at this point, it's down. This plant was directly supporting the Russian war machine that's advancing along the eastern Zaporizhzhia front. In other words, this facility produced gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil. They only made gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil. The fuel oil was exported, while the gasoline and diesel went to the Russian army. Now, at least for the time being, this operation has stopped. And besides that, of course, the Russian treasury has stopped receiving petrodollars. So it's a double blow. That's why we just need to keep going. The main thing is not to stop. Why? Because they will still try to restore it. Any plant that, let's say, we put out of commission, they can restore it in 3 to 6 months if the damage is serious. And if it's not too serious, then in a month or two, and it goes back to producing. That's why it's very important for us to talk every day about the fact that 1, 2, 3 of the main plants, there are just over 30 of them, the million-ton ones that process the bulk of Russian oil. Because, and this will have an impact, if we shut them down, it will affect oil production. Let me repeat once again, not oil extraction, but oil production, so that we get our bonus paid. By the way, that wouldn't hurt, actually. So this oil production can be stopped by these strikes on the refineries. And after that, naturally, the Russian economy will start to collapse. Well, we've already talked about Nabulina. It's her burden now. It's her cross to deal with the Russian people over her funny money.
Roman Grigorievich, some information has come up that footage has appeared of strikes specifically on Russian refineries and of combat tests of the Ukrainian cruise missile Flamingo. The missile has a range of up to 3,000 kilometers and the warhead weighs 1,150 kilograms. So our first missiles were pink. All the tests were conducted with them in pink, but then we had to change the color due to military camouflage requirements, said the CEO of Firepoint. It turns out that the strikes on Russian refineries, for example, on the Novoshakhtinsk refinery, were carried out with the new Flamingo cruise missile. Roman Grigorievich, I suggest we discuss this development of ours because it was reported that in October, production is expected to increase to 7 units per day. And how realistic is it that the Flamingo will become Ukraine's main weapon as early as this winter? And could it become Ukraine's equivalent of the Taurus, but with even greater range?
Well, indeed. If a woman had developed this particular missile and had painted it a vibrant pink color, then there would be absolutely no questions whatsoever. But if it was guys who painted it pink, well, guys, you need to do something about that. There's something wrong with your psyche.
Roman Grigorievich, I think it was a manufacturing error, and it just so happened that this color came out. Well, as I understand it, it was a mistake. Go on.
Well, they often say one single time doesn't really, well, that's the crucial question to consider. Let's just say that the pink thing happened only once, all right? That's the topic. But in reality, of course, the missile we're talking about now is, well, it's about 100 years old already, well, a little less. The V1, just remember, take a look at the German V1. So that's your Flamingo. What was there to invent? Did it really take that long? Just take a photo of the V1, that's all. And just make this missile from it. It's as simple as a corner of a house. But what is a cruise missile after all? Let a fighter pilot explain it in simple terms. It's a tube. A nose into which an aerial bomb, say a 1-ton bomb, is inserted. A wing, a straight wing is the best. That's the best for lift, the best for aerodynamic force. The only thing is, of course, it won't reach near supersonic speeds, but for lift, that's fine. This is the engine, any turbofan engine, any turbojet engine, in fact, not just a turbofan, any engine at all. The V1, for example, had a pulse jet engine. So this is as simple as it gets. It's called a control system. Almost any control system will do from any flying device, for example, from any of our drones that fly. A missile essentially is just the same thing, a drone for all intents and purposes. There you go, a Flamingo for you. Paint it pink. You can make it brown, you can add a blue stripe across it or put a red stripe along it, whatever you want. It's really simple. It's way too simple for the 7th year of their rule. Or rather for them, even in the 7th year of their rule, it turned out to be too difficult. I mean, in that time, they could have already started mass production of these missiles 3 times over. Let me repeat, it's just a tube with an aerial bomb, a guidance system, and an engine. And nothing else is needed. And it will just chug along at a speed of, say, 700 or 800 kilometers per hour on a straight wing for as long as the engine runs, limited only by the amount of fuel. The engine can run for several hours. It's single use, like a condom, as I call them, single use in that sense. However much aviation kerosene you pour in, that's how long it will go. If it's a turbojet engine. If it's a pulse jet, then it depends on the combustion coefficient. Well, after that, carry out the combat mission. Just put it on wheels. But to do that, you should have started several years ago, instead of running around for barbecue or making plans to grill May holiday kebabs. At the very least, you should have set the goal to start producing this kind of missile. V1, Flamingo, also starts with an F, by the way, just like that. And so it should take off. The main question is that this shouldn't be just another announcement from this government, which loves making these little announcements, loves to announce some actions, sell tickets, and then scatter in all directions. Where is our Palyanitsia? Do you remember how much we talked about Palyanitsia? And where is our Peklo? Where are those? And where are our ballistic missiles? Where are our SAPs and Project Groms? So this could be the same thing. That's exactly what we wouldn't want. Although I'll say it again, technically it's not a difficult task. Within a year and a half, you can put together such a missile even on your knees after all. 6 months for developing the technical documentation, a year for pre-production testing, and then mass production, in total a year and a half. So by now they could have launched this missile 3 times already. But right now, at this moment, we're only talking about the announcement. When we talk about the missiles, I'll tell you when. For example, when Dasha shows us footage of about a ton of explosives detonating, say, at the Omsk oil refinery, believe me, just 1 ton, a warhead that hits the Omsk oil refinery, which is way over there near Kazakhstan, processes 21 million tons per year. It's the largest Russian refinery, and they bring in over 3,200 tons from almost 3,000 kilometers away. So a missile like that, if its declared solid fuel engine specifications are accurate, will reach there and explode. Only after that can we finally say that we have a missile. But for now, let's just say that once again, this government has shown us teaser videos, danced around, sold tickets, and said, get your popcorn ready. We stocked up on popcorn back during the May barbecues, and by now that popcorn has already gone stale after all. At least show us something.
Roman Grigorievich, could Trump's statement that Ukraine should strike Russian territory, the appearance of Flamingo and other missiles, Ukrainian ballistic missiles, could all this be a signal that Moscow and St. Petersburg will soon be targeted by Ukrainian and American missiles? That's the question.
Well, Ukrainian missiles, the use of Ukrainian missiles doesn't depend on Trump at all. No matter what he says, whether he throws a fit, jumps up and down, rolls out a red carpet again, crawls along it on all fours, applauds himself, whatever he does. If these are Ukrainian missiles, what does Trump have to do with it? Is he somehow involved in everything that happens in this world, or what? So wherever something happens, it's Trump. Here I am with my curly forelock, or maybe all slicked back, and that's it. And off he goes again. Well, in this case, he's absolutely unnecessary. But when it comes to American missiles, well, of course, that's entirely up to Trump. He's the only one who has the right to allow the supply of missiles to us. Did they deliver F-16s to us? They did. What is an F-16? It's a good platform, great for aerobatics, as long as there are no combat weapons on board. The aerobatics are good. You can chase sparrows with the cannon, because even chasing drones with the cannon is pretty tricky and at the very least dangerous. And if there are no missiles, then it's just a platform for performing complex and advanced aerobatic maneuvers, basically for ground spectators to watch. But for it to actually work, for this platform to be effective against targets deep inside Russia, you need missiles. Missiles at least at the level of the Jazz. There are different types with ranges from 370 to 950 kilometers, well, at least 370. But again, we definitely would have seen it here. At that range, if a half-ton warhead hit from 300 or 350 kilometers away, it's obvious that after the F-16 takes off, it's clear that it's a Jazz missile and the Russians would be screaming about it. We would be the first to hear the Russians outcry. They would have immediately run to Putin to ask, so what were you hugging Trump for? Why did you lock yourselves in the car? What were you doing in there? Why did he start firing missiles at us using Ukrainian hands? So something must have happened in that car. In other words, they will be putting pressure on him, and at the very least, we will definitely see that pressure and immediately comment on it, saying that finally the Americans have given us Jazz missiles. But to avoid having to beg for them, the optimal option, of course, is to renegotiate contracts right now for the supply of certain aviation products from European manufacturers. So right now we have Mirages. We need to see what can be added to the Mirage so that, for example, it can operate. There's the Storm Shadow missile, there's the Scalp missile. By the way, their range is also about 500 kilometers. They're giving us the 250 kilogram ones. These are the export version missiles, so to speak. And the standard missiles have a range of 500 kilometers, a bit more than 500, similar to the Taurus missiles, by the way, in terms of range. So it would be great to get such French missiles if, for example, the issue is resolved with, say, those Swedish aircraft. Well, in fact, we can get almost all European weaponry, including long-range missiles. By the way, those same Swedish Gripens can also carry Taurus missiles. By the way, we're waiting for Taras. Remember, we were once told that maybe we wouldn't get the Taurus missiles, but we'd get some other missiles. They'd give us a bucket of paint and say, paint whatever you want on it, let it be Taras. So for now, we're still waiting on the Europeans. From Trump, you can only expect empty talk. He's just a blabbermouth. At this stage, he's a blabbermouth who has been talking nonsense for half a year. One thing in the morning, something else in the evening. And the next morning, Dasha asks Svitan, so what was Trump blabbering about yesterday morning? I never finished any psychology institutes, and for me, as a military man, it's hard to decipher the ramblings of an 80-year-old. Soon enough, in about 20 years, I'll be that age too, and maybe I'll have the same problem. At least I won't be blabbering on when I'm 80. But this guy, he just keeps on rambling like he always has. A real chatterbox, as they say. So honestly, it is quite challenging for me, not being a trained psychologist, mind you, to truly and deeply comprehend what precisely transpires within the intricate mind of an 80-year-old deeply entrenched narcissist who now, with an almost desperate urgency, endeavors to visit every conceivable hotspot and conspicuously display his involvement and presence there.
Yeah. Dear audience, please like this video. Write in the comments what you expect from next week. Lavrov has already stated that there will be no meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Does this mean that Trump will impose new sanctions or provide Ukraine with long-range weapons? That remains to be seen. On Monday, we will meet with Roman Svitan and discuss all of this. The well-known military analyst Roman Svitan. Roman Grigorievich, thank you. And as usual, see you this Monday.
Goodbye. The main thing is that Trump doesn't end up being the one who passes it on again. That's the problem. You see, you said it clearly. You even stuck his current vision right on his forehead. So if Trump eventually finds the courage and decides to participate in our war with Russia on our side, not on the Russian side, why is Trump on the Russian side right now? Well, because he, let's put it mildly, I just don't want to swear and I don't want to insult him more than we've already said about him. Well, to put it mildly, he's not a brave person. He's not a brave person. So if he finds the courage within himself and takes our side, then we really will be able to put Russia in its place, with Trump's help. And then it could be said that he truly is a president of a great power. But for now, at this moment, the country is great. When it comes to Americans, you can't say anything bad about them. They just got unlucky with their president. So until Monday, see you on Monday.